Imagine the fate of humanity resting on child soldiers who think it's just a game, and the kid who clinches the victory never gets credit. I'm Space Admiral Kandas.
I'm Shane, Space Cadet.
Second class. And you are listening to Sci-Fi Book Pod. Today we are chatting about Orson Scott Card's Ender's Shadow, the gripping companion to Ender's Game, with our visiting dignitary, comedian, and author, Mahlena-Ray Johnson. Welcome, Mahlena.
Thank you for calling me a comedian and dignitary. Also an author, yes.
Hey, everybody who comes is a visiting dignitary because you are the dignitary. So you picked the book. Why did you choose Ender's Shadow?
Because I identify with Bean more than Ender. Bean's the main person in Ender's Shadow. There's a bunch of people, but I identify with his thought processes a lot more than Ender, who seems to be a more typical character of the more like usual reluctant hero and has all this greatness thrust upon him, and he's capable but not really like aware of all the stuff that's going on, whereas Bean is very aware and no one wants to thrust anything upon him. And he seems to be smarter than everyone in the room and actually trying to do stuff, whereas Ender kind of just falls into stuff that is designated for him.
If you were to compare Ender and Bean to Frodo and Samwise, Bean is Samwise.
I would definitely say there's a comparison to be made between Ender and Frodo, but I think Bean would be like someone reading the book and be like, like I get where you're going with this, but
well, the reason why I say that is because in the end, Sam is the hero.
Yes, I just think that there is a similar. Frodo is like positioned as the protagonist of the book because the book is written about him, and Samwise is also there. So I think Samwise would be more like, I think it's Dink or ally, as they're like Samwise are not positioned in the same way, and no one else sees Samwise as like the person who is as capable or as I don't know, even like the designation of this is who we're following and that's it, and Samwise is also there, whereas the people in the book, once Ender's Shadow has been written, clearly know that Bean is very capable and they're somewhat annoyed by him, but they still have a respect and a reverence for him despite the annoyance. Whereas the other people in the Lord of the Rings never see Samwise as being as worthy, like on his own, aside from Frodo.
Yeah.
Based on the movies that I watched.
Yeah, I can see where you're coming from there. I don't know. If you were to compare both books side by side, Ender's Game and Ender's Shadow is a much superior story. It's just,
well, it's more informed on, so I have it right here. Let me check when it was first published.
Yeah, I was going to look that up, but I forgot. So thank you for doing this.
Yeah, okay. So look at this.
Because I know that it was almost over a decade in between.
So this was published Ender's Shadow was published in 1999, and I'm pretty sure that the first Ender's Game story was published in 1977.
Oh, wow. 15 years.
So 22 years.
Oh,
so you had some time to think about it.
I did bad math.
So a lot changed in the world and how people experienced media during that time. So I could definitely understand how the first Ender's Game story, just the novella, was written in a period where there wasn't that much media to inform the story. But by 1999, there's a whole period of not just like film, but also cable television as well as VCRs. So there's a whole library of content that you reference and has influenced the culture. So by the time you get to Ender's Shadow, it's not just that the whole world has changed. The writer has changed how he thinks about media and culture, which is very much seen in the way that in Ender's Game, which I finished, I think last week, we'll say that. He is so focused on Locke and Demosthenes as writing to influence world culture and policy, and that's in the background of Ender's Shadow. It's like, we don't need to talk about writers anymore, because he had also written all these books by the time, so he's not just thinking of himself as like, I'm a writer who has to prove something. It's like there's other things going on besides writing that influences geopolitical actions.
I want to touch on Locke and Demosthenes for just a second, even though they're in the other book and not mentioned at all in Ender's Shadow. Oh, well, no, they are mentioned like very briefly.
Mm-hmm.
To me, if you were to make an analog for today, for 2026, they're YouTubers, they're TikTok influencers, right? They're
more podcasters who also have media, different platform influence.
Yeah. So Shane and I read these books at different times. And the other day he says to me, "They're brothers." So there is so many pieces. There's like little hints and little. I think that Orson Scott Card became a better writer over the 25 years that passed.
Yes, I mean, still horrible person.
Oh yeah,
better
writer.
Person.
Yes, and we could talk about what a horrible person he is too, because it's kind of one of those
J.K.
Rowling stories. I mean, she created.
Well, we didn't know that when she was writing the book.
That's the problem. That's the problem.
But did we really know it about Orson Scott Card as well? No,
probably because there wasn't like no one was focusing on him as a human back. Like I didn't know who he was until someone mentioned that Ender's Game was exactly like Harry Potter, and I read it. I was like, no, it's not. But I hadn't heard of him before the 2000s because that type of media influence didn't exist for people who wrote children's books, except if you're like Beatrice Potter or the Sweet Valley and Babysitters Club people. But yeah, the concept of having the beliefs of a children's author was not really front page news because we had newspapers, not social media.
Yeah. Well, how it usually works, I've had some experience in this, is that the work comes first. People like the work. It's kind of like an athlete or a singer. They like the song. They never seen the singer, so they heard the song. They want to know who the singer is because they like the song. And so they look up that person. And because the work is great or they like it or they fall in love with it, they expect the author or the creator to be the same as the main character, as just as grandiose or kind or whatever. And you have to look at other authors and how they operate and how they'll disappoint you. Let's put it that way. Your heroes will disappoint you. They'll disappoint you every time because they're flawed. They're humans. All right. They have lives. And whether you agree what their politics are or what their stance are or whatever, this and the other thing, will start to take away from the work that you loved. And then you become cynical old man like myself.
Oh dear.
But the thing is that we want to put authors, actors, people that we admire on a pedestal.
Well, I don't.
Well, that's how it usually works, is that it usually is basically they look at your work and they expect great things behind that work, kind of thing. I'm not justifying the guy's an ass, but what I'm just saying is that it's like Henry Ford. Henry Ford did this, this, and this, and this. But if you look at him closely, if you look at his background, he's an ass.
Yeah.
He's he's an abuser.
Yeah.
And so you have to, and we don't do that. We can't divide the two. And you probably
some people do.
Some people do.
I think it depends on the person who is doing the consuming of the media, as well as the stuff that has been done. Like I learned more about who the person was after I read the book, and then went on to read Ender's Shadow to see what else is going on. But there are people who, like, especially at this time in my life, at whatever time in anybody's life, there are choices to be made about media, especially now since there is so much, and I can't possibly consume every book or every show that is presently out now. But there are some people that I have said I am not going to consume any more of their work because there's no more benefit for me, but also I don't want to contribute to that in my mind, and it's just not, there's no reason for me to do so. And it's not that I thought because they made something great that they should live up to I didn't have a notion of them. It's more of, it's an individual choice, a case by case basis. This series is something that I don't even know if Orson Scott Card is still alive, but I acknowledge who he is and acknowledge the work that he's made, and am very critical of it, but I don't recommend it to other people without the caveats of, this is who this person is, this is what he wrote, these are the troubles with the things that he wrote, there it is. I don't expect him to change who he is or live up to some ideal that I have for people that I interact with on a regular basis.
So before my daughter told me about his problems, and if you, listener, if you have no idea what we're talking about, he was very anti-LGBTQ. He was like the CEO of the anti-LGBTQ league. I mean, I know that is not the correct term, but he was very, very anti-LGBTQ, much like J.K. Rowling. So here's what bothers me, though. In both of the books, because we read both of them, Ender's Shadow and Ender's Game, in both of these books, naked 6-year-olds is a prevalent thing. These kids think that clothing is optional in a unisex situation.
Yes, that is one of the many things that is not okay. Like the anti-queer stuff is a little different than J.K. Rowling's, because she is specifically anti-trans and doesn't get that is. They each have their own issues. He is full of them. What is the anti-gay stuff? Another of multiple is having naked children in situations, him putting them in these situations. They're not I want to volunteer. No, you wrote it that way.
And it was just like this. It was an unnecessary piece of the puzzle. It didn't need to be included. And what was really interesting was because I watched the movie the other day. Shane says that we saw the movie before, but I don't remember. In the movie, they very clearly made it, this is the girls' bathroom, this is the boys' bathroom. Boys aren't allowed in the girls' bathroom. Girls aren't allowed in the boys' bathroom. But in the books, they had one bathroom.
But
one bathroom, one sleeping space.
Yeah, one sleeping space.
You're right about the naked stuff. It's just that was weird. Why did he put that in there?
Why is that important?
There were things it was just well, that was weird. Why? I mean, this guy was a freaking nut. Let's just put it that way. And I want to move on to more of the book.
Yeah, me too.
And so, if you're anti whatever, go ahead, dive into the author. You'll love him. Subscribe to his whatever. The book itself, though, the second one, is basically a mirror image of basically the first one. This is the perspective of Bean at the same timeline. When I heard there was a second book, I thought that was extension. So make it very clear. This book goes on the exact same time as basically Ender. So it's kind of like, you're in the other room, there's shit happening. I can understand all that because I've done art pieces where I kind of redid stuff 10 years afterwards. And it's well, this is everything I wanted to do to this piece, but didn't either have the talent or the time or didn't think people were going to like it.
Yeah.
So now that he has more money and he has more time and he's a somewhat better writer, you know, he can dig into this a little bit better. And that's why Bean, I think everybody liked Bean in the first book because he's like the underdog kind of thing, like the shrimp. And a lot of people can relate to the shrimp because we were, you know, either you were a big kid, all right, that had issues, or you were the shrimp that had issues, especially if you're a boy. Because you have different growing spurts kind of thing. I'll be honest, I didn't finish the book. I was like 1 hour off. But the thing is, I got to the point where basically they had the psychotic killer confess in the book. He made it a point to basically describe that psychotic killer in detail of his brain thinking. I'm going to get them all back. I'm going to get them all back. They're all going to, you know, this, that, and the other. I mean, at the end, he was going to pretty much kill everybody. He was a serial killer. And then what was that character's name? Do you guys remember?
Ashiel.
All right. So, and I'm listening to this guy and I'm listening to the author and this, that, and the other thing. I'm like, this is today. This is what I'm dealing with today. I mean, I can go on YouTube right now as we speak, and I will see that mimic of that freaking comments and whatever of Ashiel all over the place. So it's really good to understand that basically where this author was made it a really point to make Ashiel a serial killer. And so it's almost like, well, why? Why is this guy in the freaking book at all?
So let's talk about their upbringing. Ashiel and Bean were street kids. They were raised on the street. They didn't have parents. They relied on other kids. And Bean ended up one way and Ashiel ended up another. But how many people who live on the streets actually have to kill because they, you know, they're defending themselves, or they just become killers because of the people around them, turn them into killers?
Well, it seemed like they were set up as, based on all the other street children that they were around, like Ashiel was going to be that way anyway, and the other people were not. Like there was definitely a we know stuff is rough, and there's a lot of talk about child prostitution and adult prostitution and things that people had to do.
Well, but there's another problematic thing. At 9, she's getting to be too old.
Yes.
I mean, there's a lot of problematic
but in
pieces.
The
this
movie,
is not a children's book.
If they're children who grow up that way, they would see themselves.
It's funny how basically in the future, how anarchy always seems to be the ruler, or it seems to be the backdrop. Because even in The Expanse, that was there. That was the anarchy, the back anarchy of, and even in Star Trek in a couple episodes, the anarchy was in the backdrop. And
there's anarchy. There's anarchy now. I mean,
but where do the? I mean, some of it always ends up to be freaking like abusing children. That's what I'm trying to get at. Is like The Expanse, same thing. And this one, same thing. It always seems to be the same thing.
That's not anarchy and abusing children are two different things.
But how society drops.
That's
what I'm trying to get at. Allows it.
The dredges of society.
Yeah.
That is a choice of certain authors and creators to hide their. Whenever you're writing a sci-fi book, you're commenting on the time that you're living in. So that is perpetual.
Yeah.
Seems to be a lot of it.
Dystopia sells better than utopia, even though Star Trek did really well. So I don't understand. You know? Yeah. I mean, I prefer the Star Trek version of the future rather than the Expanse version, although Expanse was a very well written story. So let's talk about the characters, because Ender's Shadow has some really interesting characters, and it also has a little bit of a religious it's not little, I mean, it's a major piece of the story, is that religion, you have to reject religion to be part of this upper crust of society, but in the end they rely on a nun to find the hero of the story.
That is present. Well, I mean, it's present because Orson Scott Card is very specific about his Mormonism, but he did a similar thing in the first the first short stories that came after the Ender's Game novella, which I forgot to bring the book up. There was Teacher's Pet, and there was the one before that. But he continued to compare, I think because Catholicism is more of a mainstream religion than Mormonism, he tried to use them as analogs, even though they're not.
Well, and Ender's mother is Mormon, and Ender's father is Catholic.
Yeah.
So that's which I thought was really interesting too.
I find it interesting that all these sci-fi books always goes to the Catholic Church, the Catholic religion, as like the religion of the. In other words, like, I guess the thing is that basically, I guess if it's lasted 2,500 years, it will last for another 5,000 years, and it's because it's an institution. But even again, even in Expanse, but even on a lot of different other books, they will bring the Catholic Church as the religious aspect,
Dune.
as Dune, as their storyline.
It is a reflection of the gatekeepers, not so much the people who are actually writing and the world as it is, because Catholicism is not the oldest religion, but
No.
it is familiar to people who can greenlight a story like Dune to be made into multiple, like, books into multiple movies. But there's not that much. There aren't many people who are controlling the American propaganda system who are that well versed in Hinduism or Buddhism.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Or
That's
Islam.
true. That is true. Well, there's a lot of
But-
correlation between. I mean, Islam and Catholicism have the same root.
But also, I think the Catholic Church has fed into their secret society as well. So basically, the public itself
Yeah.
always kind of sees the Catholic Church as this secret
Da Vinci Code.
Da Vinci Code stuff.
Yeah.
So it's an easy pitch, and it's an easy thing for people to like see that as at that entity, or use that as a tool in a book or a novel, more than a Mormon, because basically nobody knows what the hell that is.
Yeah.
So-
Yes, you have to
and
watch the
and
South
it's
Park
true.
episode.
And even though Mormonism is this expansive religion that is working really hard to grow, we really don't know a lot about the religion because it's very secretive. Like, if you're not a Mormon, you're not invited to church.
Yeah.
So we
it's-
don't-
it's-
But Catholics, you can go to a Catholic church anytime you want and see what's going on there.
Well, there's always a Catholic Church around the corner.
That's true too.
You know.
Shane and
But
I,
I just find it.
Shane and I were both
interesting.
born into Catholic families.
Yeah, I just
Oh.
find it interesting how basically almost every sci-fi book I book up that has a religious injection in it for whatever reason always seems to be the Catholic Church. and it's
But
not
I think
just
Melena has a point. It's the gatekeepers.
yeah.
I'm
I
writing
think
this
it's-
to get published.
Mhm.
That's true. Yeah, yeah.
I mean, and that, I mean, as a writer, I mean, you've written science fiction, Melena. When you write your stories, are you writing to get published, or are you writing because you want to write the story?
Well, right.
It's a both. It's a scenario here.
Well, there's I was asked at my Christmas dinner, what are you still writing? And I'm like, no. the conversation kind of veered off from there into whatever my cousin was talking about. But essentially, when I was writing the things that I wanted to write, being who I am and knowing how both publishing and television and entertainment in general functions, I wasn't writing to hope to be published, because I self-published my books at this point in time. Last book, the 5th book that I wrote, Ellie's, was based on a pilot script that I wrote, Ellie's, about it's a sci-fi dramedy about what would happen if Black women run everything. And that is not something that is like, I had to use Veep and Black Panther and Parks and Recreation as comparables, but that's not something that is being shown or that people want to buy. So I essentially write for me and hope for the best. But I
Right.
do understand other people's, like, when the vampire trend was happening in the 2000s and rest of the 2010s, I can understand people wanting to jump on a trend because it is really hard to get something sold in Hollywood. So I don't blame people for writing about the Catholic Church, especially if they have grown up in it. That's your story. But I do reiterate that it is easier to write something about the Catholic Church than, say, Mormonism or Taoism or some other thing that it doesn't have like the
because you're going to get more
Exorcist.
conflict. You're going to get more. You're just going to get hate
Well,
now.
you're going to get people who can easily relate, not because they're Catholic, but because they've seen The Godfather or they've seen tons of other movies and read tons of other books that are based in Catholic rituals and history and lore.
Yeah.
And it's hard to have Mormon lore when you're not letting someone in your church.
Well, okay. First of all, The Expanse used the Mormons for the big shit. Okay, but he used it because the Catholics wouldn't do that, but the Mormons would. So the Mormons were the tool to make the Goliath ship that wasn't in The Expanse, because that's what Mormons do.
Melena, have you seen or read The Expanse?
No.
Okay.
I've heard of it.
Okay.
But Shane seems very passionate about it.
He is very passionate about it. We should probably do a podcast about The Expanse. Like, it should be the only
book is
thing
far
we talk
better.
about.
The book is far better than the movie, of course, because the book gives you a lot more detail. But it's a doorstopper. Just letting you know,
it's very, very long. I want to mention that we have referred to The Godfather, The Expanse, Harry Potter, Lord of the Rings. So what Melena just said is so true. In our minds, we refer to what we already know.
Mm-hmm.
From listening to the epilogue in the story, he said that he wrote this as a companion piece, but then when he wrote the script for the movie, he melded both of the stories together because he was trying to make a 2-hour movie out of 25 hours of content, right? Or 25 hours of book. And by putting the two stories together, he could do that. But when I watched the movie, that's not what I got.
He also tried to make it more of a movie that was palatable, which it has all the activities that happen in the story, the main ones, but it doesn't have the meaning between the relationships, especially between Ender and Petra. Like, that became a Hollywood relationship that was not what was intended in the books.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's like Kandas says, they turn it into a romantic thingy.
Yeah, there was no romance there.
And the romance was with Valentine, his sister.
Yeah.
Yeah. I think you're right there. Yeah.
But the thing, let's just bring another movie, or let's bring another story in here.
Oh, geez. Right? Okay.
As a compliment. No, here's what I've noticed is basically, because we're taking other books and stories and trying to make sense of this one, or trying to make a picture out of it. What I've noticed is that in any book, you'll have your main character, okay, and that character is either flawed or something, or a farm boy or whatever. And then you have his friends, all right? And he either has to, and they're going after the big bad person. But there's always this odd thing to pull the story together. In other words, to make the story work, you need this person, or you need this thing. And this thing, I always call it the R2-D2 effect. In other words, you need an R2-D2. So R2-D2 saves the day out of nowhere and keeps the story rolling. All right. If you didn't have R2-D2, it wouldn't work. So I asked you two, who's the R2-D2 in Bean, in the Bean story?
I don't know.
His brother.
Oh, yeah.
His brother.
I love that piece. I love that piece of the story, that he actually has a brother.
Yeah.
I think that's amazing. You haven't heard the ending yet, but the ending of this book is perfect, because even though Bean doesn't get credit for saving the universe, quote unquote saving the universe, because actually the
just the galaxy.
Yeah. I mean, there's so many problems with what humanity did, but that's a whole nother story. But Bean gets his happy ending. Bean gets a really amazing happy ending, and Ender doesn't.
No, not at all.
Ender doesn't at all. I think in this story, though, Sister Carlotta is one of the most intriguing characters.
Mm-hmm.
Yes, she is a woman who gets to say stuff as opposed to in the book, but less so in the movie because Viola Davis was Anderson.
Yeah, that was an interesting choice too.
Yeah.
Sister Carlotta and Viola and Anderson kind of they made them one. Yeah, and I don't like that because Sister Carlotta was a really, I mean, and the whole thing with the shield in the Ender Shadow story was so important because the grown-ups didn't get it, right? They didn't listen to Sister Carlotta. She told them. She told them, and they didn't listen to her.
But they didn't listen to her. They didn't listen to her because she was either
a woman or a nun.
Woman, nun, religious, so on and so on and so on. But then you have Bean's commander basically keep on fighting against her, and it took a while for him to come around. I mean, actually, to the end. But he kept on saying, "You don't know what you're talking about.
Anderson.
You don't know what you're talking about." Yeah. So how many as women, how many times have you heard that?
Oh, constantly.
Well, yes, but I think that was also supposed maybe knowledgeably or unwittingly supposed to foil what happened in Ender's Game, where people were told specifically, this is going to be bad. You need to protect Ender, and other people are like, no, we have to do this. But in Ender's Shadow, it was like, this is going to be bad. And they're like, no, it's fine. Like they weren't trying to prepare Bean in the same way. They were so focused on Ender that they had a spare, but they didn't think to train him in the same way as they were trying to train Ender. But they got to the same place.
But did Bean really need to be trained? Intuitively, he knew what to do.
Well, that is he did know what, there was a lot of logic that was happening, but it was very clear that there was a lack of guidance in a similar way that happened to Ender because he was taken away from his parents. But I think because Bean didn't have parents, none of the adults thought that he needed someone, because like they just didn't see him as someone who, they forgot that all these children were children and that they need help. But they also saw him as a street kid, not as someone who came from a family.
Yeah.
A lesser.
Yeah.
That he didn't need it. I got the feeling, especially when Ender confided in him, and Bean was kind of struck by that and was surprised by that. And so it's through his and through the whole book actually was the survival instinct that would be prevalent. So for him, nobody loved him. Nobody cared about him. Even sister, whatever her name was. Nobody cared. Carlotta. That's why he didn't know how to hug her. So he hugged her for her benefit, not for his. Because he thought it was silly. He thought it was,
but really, the janitor that rescued him and Sister Carlotta both really cared about him. And
yeah, but you don't see that in the contents of a small child. You don't see that in the contents actually of a grown person either.
Yeah, but both of those adults made him leave. I mean, the janitor told him to go.
Right.
And Sister Carlotta sent him away to the Space Academy.
So basically in his mind, probably, or basically how I have a hard time. These characters are written sometimes very well. So basically you think they're actual people instead of make-believe characters. But I would probably suggest that his mind was kind of like, well, I'm proven right. They just throw me away. Right. They just keep, I mean, he didn't really speak highly of anybody, because to him, except for basically the girl, that did take him in. They called him. Yeah. And he did want payback for that, but he wanted payback as injustice.
So we need to start wrapping up. So I want to talk about Bean, the name Bean, because it's not Petra. What was her name? Who gave him that name?
Poke.
Poke gave him this name Bean because he wasn't worth a bean. Because when she found him, he was like 2 years old, right? We have to remember that we're talking about a toddler who ends up saving the world or saving the universe, right? A toddler. And he was
2 years on the toilet. I think it was like 3 or 4 when she found him.
He was still, that's still a toddler, right?
Yeah, okay.
And he wasn't worth a bean, and Bean never changed his name. And part of that, I think, was because he didn't want anybody to notice him. And he was perfectly content being given this assignment to create this army and not getting credit for it. He didn't really want that. He knew that he was more than the wingman. Like, he was really the one guiding everything. Ender was getting credit, but Bean was doing the work, right? And he was okay. Bean was okay with that. And Bean got his happy ending.
Well, that's his personality.
Yeah. I think the name Bean, what the hell was the last book we did?
A swiftly tilting planet.
Yeah, remember basically what's her name says you naming?
Naming? Yeah.
I think that name popped out of the author's brain because that happens with me art all the time. You don't know why it's done until like a year later, you kind of, or after you get done with it, you kind of look at it and going, oh, that's why I did that. Because you really don't know, because your subconscious is actually doing the work all for you, and you're just kind of like going along. As an author, you probably know that. It's just like, oh wow, that's cool. But I think the bean, yeah. I think the name of the bean, of the story of the bean, is basically it's tells him who he is. He's small, all right, but he wears it. He wears it as basically this person noticed me. You're not as, in other words, you're small as a bean, or you're not worth as a.
But you know what? Bean. You know what? They were hungry. Every single one of those kids was starving, and a bean is food.
Yeah. So but the thing is, the name calling situation, especially in playground scenarios, is that's you call somebody stinky or this or that, especially when you're kids. It's weird because it actually creates and actually becomes a badge that you want to be. That's it. That's me, and you kind of go, well, that's a bad name or something like that. But the thing is, it's my name, right? And I'm Bean, right? And at the end, or through the book, even in the first one, Bean is a hero. So Bean becomes not as a slang, but as basically, yeah, that's freaking Bean, man. Don't mess with Bean, because he has tons of respect from everybody. He earned every bit of it, and he never shied away from it. And that's the most important part, is that the naming, but he didn't shy away from it. He actually wore it, and he basically he loved the person who gave it to him.
Mm-hmm. That's true.
Yeah, and he wanted that person to have justice. He didn't kill him, like Bender, And that did make a point. He did make a point of that one. He says Bender killed that guy, right? He killed him, but Bean basically didn't kill him. He brought him to justice.
What are your closing thoughts on the book, Melena?
Well, my closing thoughts on what I've learned from this conversation is how different things resonate with different people, especially with Shane talking about the things that he saw in Achilles. Achilles never was really a big thing for me, but I can see how different aspects of all of the parts of these series can be really effective for different people. So in that, and for other reasons, especially dealing now with being a gifted adult, and really resonating with the genius that was seen in Ender, but especially Bean, I am thankful that these books were written, even though the person who wrote them isn't a great person, that people can read the stories and the relationships and the situations and find something that resonates with them, to reflect on their own lives as well as society at large. So yes, read the book, learn about the author, and take from it what you will.
I love
The
it.
good, the bad, and the ugly.
Yeah. So this has been episode 1 of season 2. We made it to our second season, y'all. So thank you for being here for that. You were also a guest on Gratitude Geek, and I'll link to that in the show notes so people can hear more about you and your story. But quickly, how can someone get a hold of you, or how can people find you on the internets?
The easiest way to find me on the internet is to type my name into Google or Bing, just the first part, Mahlena, and you can learn all about me. The best place to connect with me is on LinkedIn.
That is a wrap on our discussion about Ender's Shadow by Orson Scott Card. That name is hard to say. I've been Space Admiral Kandas.
I'm Shane Space Cadet, second class, of course.
And I'm Mahlena-Ray Johnson. Thank you both for having me. Yay!
And you have been listening to Sci-Fi Book Pod.